Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Gary Sabin, Head of Product here at Partner. Very thrilled and privileged to be joined by Peter O'Neill today from Research in Action, who will be detailing the research, this very interesting research recently released in his updated vendor selection matrix around partner management automation. I don't want to steal his thunder at all, but we're very excited about the research that he's brought to bear as it really combines the total end-to-end enablement technologies through what has previously been called TCMA as also PRM, and looks at that as a holistic enablement solution for driving success within your channel program. So I won't steal his thunder on that, but I will give him a real brief introduction and pass it over to him. Peter really doesn't need much introduction in the channel space. He's been around for a number of years and has a lot of credibility and research to his name, previously with Forrester and other noteworthy firms. So with that, I will pass the puck over to him to introduce himself a bit more, as well as the research that we'll be talking through today.
Hey, Gary, thanks for the information to speak on this webinar. And I think I'll start by just talking about all these different terms you can see here on the slide. I've been watching this market, probably helping marketing and channel professionals for well over 20 years now. I was probably one of the first analysts even to do this. I've been working at Meta Group, Gartner Group, and at Forrester Research, and now, wow, is it already 6 years? 6 years as an independent analyst with several roles, including the ones you see documented behind me on the slide, but in particular in this presentation as Research Director for Research in Action. Now, for today's topic, my discussion on research is focused on the processes involved for a manufacturer or vendor that distributes products and services through partner organizations as their indirect channel. And the two processes that are most important to marketing professionals, and that's my main audience, are channel marketing and channel enablement. Channel marketing, well, that's brand and asset management, where programs, promotions, and leads are managed both up and down the channel. And channel marketing is usually known as through channel marketing automation, TCMA, as you see listed on the slide. But of course, vendors must also manage the processes around the partner relationship itself: recruitment, registration, classification, contractual details, information exchange, and much more. And this process family is known as partner relationship management, PRM, because it has many similarities with CRM. But there are other processes usually around this that are also important, but usually operated by his business departments that are looking after partners, or even by the sales organization. Recently, my peers at Canalysys documented the current vendor landscape for all software being offered to automate all of those processes, channel management. And they named 233 vendors, 233. And they were able to spread that very long list into 11 different categories in a similar diagram to the one that Scott Brinker uses each year for his landscape of marketing software vendors, which is now, by the way, his list of 13,000 vendors. Big numbers. Now, the main reaction that business people, by the way, have when they see those sorts of graphics and those sorts of numbers is not to congratulate the analyst for the great research. It's more like, wow, that's complex, complicated. Too much. Are you expecting me to buy 11 products for my channel processes with 11 contracts to manage and pay, 11 teams of people probably to work with, and at least 11 different user interfaces, though it may even be more depending on how some people's products portfolios are structured? So in these surveys that I've been doing on these topics in the last years, we've noted a clear marker given by 1,500 business buyers each time in the survey. They prefer a channel management software platform that covers their needs: partner marketing, partner management, even partner sales. A single platform if possible. To be honest, many vendors have not reacted to this market need. They still focus on either channel marketing or enablement only, or something even more specific, just one task from a business person specific, one feature only. In the future, we think that manufacturers will not only want just one integrated channel platform, They'll seek a solution that can support a highly volatile partner community through a much more complete business cycle, from connection to order processing to service delivery. So I'm expecting channel enablement and marketing software in the future to morph to a more general platform for, let's call it, partnership management automation, in a quite different partner management world. So that's why I'm using that term. Now we can go to the next slide, please. A PMA is just one of the topics that I research through the year at Research in Action. I do between 6 and 9 of these projects per year on different marketing automation topics, marketing process topics, as you can see listed out here across this slide. And doing all that work enables me to maintain this maturity table, which actually shows positions marketing organizations sorted by process maturity, as reflected by the process automation projects I know that they're running. The average mature companies are still buying separate software solutions across their channel management stack. So you can see PRM and TCMA listed in the middle of our S-curve, as we call it. It's only the most mature firms that are looking at a more consolidated channel management process, which we call PMA. But there will be a continually increasing number of organizations that will demand that larger solution. So late last year, we surveyed 1,500 businesses again about PMA. We gave them a definition similar to the one I've just described, and we asked them several questions on the topic. The survey, by the way, was global. It was across many different industries, and it included enterprises from 1,000 employees right up to the very large enterprises with over 100,000 employees. So I'll rush you through some of the research we collected in the survey. On the next slide, we can start that. And at the end of the webinar, we'll give you the information about how to obtain the full report that will be published for a more considered review, if that's what you'd like to do. And by the way, our surveys is usually a mixture of questions that I've designed for the report, plus several questions that are embedded by individual PMA vendors for their own private use in their own market research. One question we asked for the report, after having qualified the survey respondents that they understand what we meant by PMA and had interesting input, was why do it at all? Why do PMA? Well, the most important reason is because they do not have a clear picture of who are their most important partners. They do not have a clear business picture which could be based upon revenues passing through the partner, or increasingly important, how much business is influenced by a partner. And pure play PRM or TCMA systems just don't record that. You can see the other priorities listed here, and we actually gave them a choice of some 15 line items to select from. So on the next slide, we talked about the impact of the partners on a manufacturer's business, and that can be differentiated into direct revenue earned or sold by the partner or resold by the partner, and influence, as I've just mentioned, which means that they recognize a partner had pointed a potential customer to their solution in a sales conversation or on a website, or just recommended they buy directly from the vendor without the partner being involved. The whole challenge of compensation management in that scenario for the partners depends on having the right knowledge of when and how partners did that influence and could be attributed with their influence on the project. And as you can see here, there are already significant areas of manufacturing revenues that are heavily influenced by the partners. The last of the 3 questions from the survey I'd like to share with you today on the next slide is that we also asked about their knowledge of which types of partners they work with. Back in the old days, most manufacturers would know about their resellers, dealers, and system integrators. And it was pretty easy to manage this portfolio and main contracts and payments in that type of easy ecosystem. But as you can see here, the channel ecosystem is now much more complicated, with partners labeled as affiliates, media houses, or just influencers. We did the same survey 2 years ago, and you can see some changes in some of the categories there, but it's also the most important takeout from this slide is the mix of categories and how many are now involved as partners with companies. Many of these new partner types are a result of e-commerce or just digital marketing. Buyers are now not just holding meetings with salespeople, they're researching around various websites that could influence a buying decision. And the owner of that website would like to be rewarded by the product vendor if a sale then occurs because of their supposed influence. It's a major argument now for marketing organizations needing to upgrade their channel management software to a more PMA-like platform. If they run different systems for each partner type, they are having great management issues with this type of business. So based on these and then other questions, and plus a series of in-depth interviews I also held in parallel with several channel executives that I know well, I'm able to put together a summary of the most major trends that I've observed in this research, and they're summarized on the next slide. Yes, manufacturers in all industries, I find, are now recognizing new cloud-based channels and want to deal with them. This isn't just an IT trend. This is happening across all of manufacturing, all different industries. And the advent of as a service in many sectors is introducing a whole new dimension of partnerships. When they add software-based services or apps around their products, be it a train, be it an aircraft, be it whatever, companies are engaging with new partners around those apps in the cloud and in marketplaces. Cloud has already disrupted many an established vendor-partner relationship in the IT sector. Partners of computer hardware vendors, whatever that was, now offer their solutions on the cloud instead and need partnerships in a different form altogether. And the same is happening in all other manufacturing sectors. In fact, the partners have taken control, and manufacturers can no longer map out target markets and then plan their partnerships like generals ordering armies around a war zone. The market and partner communities run the new game. So companies must now cope with tens of thousands of potential partners around the world. Partner recruiters, partner managers, they cannot handle that volume in person. They must rely on a software platform to do that, to do the recruitment, to be found, and to do the management. The third point I think is very important, and I talked about it a few moments ago about attribution and how to reward partners for their behavior in the sales cycle. Channel attribution is becoming a business fundamental. Channel performance and attribution was always important for all B2B and even B2B2C digital businesses, but now there are many more types of attribution: reselling, distributing, recommending, influencing, listing even. The accurate attribution to all worthy partners is now economic priority, and modern platforms will need to include truly advanced multi-touch attribution functions beyond the sort of basic attribution technologies or techniques like first touch and last touch, etc. So presented differently, I see these 5 major changes happening on the next slide. Moving from left to right across these 5 different parameters. I mean, let's be honest, for decades, channel enablement and marketing were just a peripheral process in most industries. The mantra was, first we sell direct, and then we'll find some partners for the rest of the business, which was fine for most firms then because they were selling physical products, or in the IT industry, at least on-premise software. And they needed knowledgeable sellers to present and position the offers to buyers. The people then responsible for the channel side of the business were usually working in their own silo, often outside of the view of marketing or even sales management, usually not considered to be a strategic part of the company even. But now, almost every industry is morphing to this as-a-service business model, and buyers are pulling the service based on their own research. But hey, channel partners are not being disintermediated. This was a strange cliche that came out in the 1990s when the internet took hold, and everybody was starting to write about e-business and e-commerce taking work away from channel partners. If anything, the channel has become even more influential and applicational for businesses. But the business model in the channel has changed. and they're more likely now to live off revenues earned from the end user than from the manufacturer they now only occasionally represent. And in addition to resellers or distributors, we have channel players called affiliates, referrers, associations, communities, groups, ambassadors. The list goes on. It's new, something new every few months. What has happened is that just as we like to talk about customer-centric or buyer-led purchasing, the partners are now taking control over the business they'll do with vendors, from push to pull. Ultimately, when all of these trends have completed their cycle from left to right, manufacturers will sorely need a much more holistic partner automation system which covers all of these scenarios. I say much more because till now, most channel software has been focused on just one or two of the family of processes under enablement and marketing. On the next slide, I'd like to talk about what the implications are of these trends for the vendors themselves, the vendors of PRM software, TCMA software, PMA software, and so on. Well, the new PMA vendor landscape is going to leave pure play PRM or TCMA vendors behind. Already our previous two reports on this topic in 2019 and in 2022 had highlighted that many vendors are preferring to stick to their traditional offering of just PRM or just TCMA. They were happy to do business as usual and find clients who wanted the same. It was going to become complicated and expensive to add new functions, especially around e-commerce and around digital marketing. But as more and more industries complete the digital transformation of all their channels, those vendors will now run out of addressable clients. They're also likely to lose much of their installed base as those customers need to transform their channel marketing and their channel platforms. The integration of PMA functions is going to become much more significant, integration thereof. Most manufacturers have a channel software stack that consists of many parts, PRM plus other software tools that the PRM does not cover. And okay, with smaller volumes and more or less manual channel management, this was less problematic. In a more digital business world, with higher volumes of transactions, transaction types, partners and partner types, companies will need a much more comprehensive and, more importantly, fully integrated PMA platform. The last point is quite curious and interesting. The PMA vendors are selling their solution, their platforms to the manufacturers, the vendors, but they're actually providing a partner experience, and that's what they're going to be measured on for their success. In a manufacturer-led channel model, the vendors were messaging and configuring their products to the buyer needs. The balance of power but has moved to the partners. And a typical partner has many business relationships with manufacturers, on average around 30. So partners end up having to navigate multiple portals each day, and they're going to start to prefer to work with those manufacturers who provide the best user experience to them to reduce friction in acclimatization and in retraining. So PMA vendors need to take note. Make partner experience a high priority in the design of your solutions. So that was the research that we did around PMA with some of the questions and some of the trends and the interviews that I did. Now, the second half of our survey focused more on the vendors that the respondents would recognize and associate with PMA. We asked them to spend some time giving us their assessment of one or maybe even two vendors that they knew well enough with PMA so that we could score those vendors. On to the next slide, please. As I said at the start, there are some 233 vendors offering solutions with the big picture of PMA that I've described, but most of them covering just a part of the functionality. So these 19 vendors were named and rated by enough survey respondents to appear in our table here of the top PMA vendors. Congratulations to each of these vendors. To get into this list is quite an achievement, and potentially each of them could expand their product offering through R&D or even through acquisitions to become a fuller PMA platform. But then we started to ask the respondents to evaluate the vendors on specific topics. We asked a series of questions of the respondents where they should score the vendor on different subject areas. So on the next slide, you can see that list of questions. Each respondent scored the vendor they were focused on for each criterion. There were 4 criterion in the strategy category, and they could be based upon personal experience with the vendor or just a perception of the vendor based upon their research or conversations with other peers. For me, the most important one is the recommendation index. That's an easy question. Would you recommend this vendor to your peer? Easy question with a yes or no answer. The execution section is also 4 criterion. Again, the replies could be based upon personal experience with the vendor or just a perception that they have based on research and or conversations with other people. The survey scores, actually the 1,500 people that replied, their scores account for 63% of the scoring that we publish in our report. I talk to the vendors myself after the survey and get a briefing and ask my questions, and I then get to assess, to enter my assessment scores for the viability and execution capabilities in the strategy section and the market share and growth into the execution section. I also get the chance maybe to adjust the product and the vision scores if I think that the research information, the respondents' information is a little bit wrong. But I don't do that very often, to be honest. Now, this is a major difference in the research reports issued by my colleagues at Gartner Group or Forrester Research. Their reports are purely the analyst's point of view, based on the analyst's assessment of a product, an interview and briefings and demonstration of the product. They develop long, detailed questionnaires where the vendor has to then present the vendor product functionality, feature by feature, and go through lots of details. Our research, this report, is mostly informed by the market point of view, plus some small inputs by myself. Anyway, adding up the vendor scores and using the weightings that you can see listed here, we can end up with a scoring table of those top 19 vendors that were named in the survey. And on the next slide, you can see how that table looks in the 2024 report. Congratulations to ePartner for their #1 position. They've been in that position for all the 4 surveys over the last 6 years. I hope I've made clear how objective we do this research and how we collect our data. We're pretty proud of our methodology, and we do some 25 reports across Research in Action each year in various topics, evaluating probably well over 350 vendors across those different reports. So quite a wealth of information and methodology that's behind this data. So my contact details are shown on the next slide. I hope I've laid out the basis now for where PRM is going into the future, and I'm looking forward to hearing the comments now from ePartner.
Thanks, Peter. We really appreciate that, the breakdown, and it's we spend a lot of time with analysts, right? And we hear a lot of different views and perspectives on the channel technology and all of the things that are going to enabling the modern ecosystem and all those kinds of things. Everybody's got their own particular view of the world and vernacular that supports it. And one of the things that really caught our eye about your research in particular is that element of kind of that overall seamless combination of, it's not just TCMA or PRM, but that, and we view that anecdotally within our own customer base, the maturity curve, our folks that are using those 2 technologies end to end seamlessly. So to great effect, to drive success. It's not just about managing partners. It's not just about marketing with partners. It's not solely about trying to manage the revenues associated with it, but it's that holistic approach of bringing in partners on their terms, helping them to be successful, generating demand, servicing that together, and really tracking, managing, and helping to serve that overall uplift to manufacturers and vendors' revenues with that. So with that, we appreciate the breakdown of that and the insights and the trends and things that you're observing, and wanted to take a minute on the backside of that to talk through how we view that coming together from a tooling perspective, right? It's, a lot of those trends and insights, I think, are really manifesting themselves in the way that folks are looking for tooling and looking to utilize tooling and those kinds of things. We PRM, and I'll use that vernacular for consistency, right? Knowing that's only really kind of half of the equation. But in that overall PMA, when we look at that, it's really the sum total of the capabilities and amenities and things that need to be offered to a partner to be able to take them through the end-to-end life cycle, right? All the way from identifying and recruiting those partners or allowing them to enroll. I think, we agree wholeheartedly with a lot of the trends and things you've identified. A lot of this is a pull method where partners are hand raising, and we're opportunistically watching things naturally evolve in our ecosystem, and then noting who's kind of the rising stars that we can formalize the relationship with and strategically work with an approach to expanding that relationship. But understanding that you've got to facilitate a certain large quantity of partners in order for that process to happen, but knowing that the Pareto principle is alive and well in there. It's 80-20 rule is probably a little bit generous. It's a lot of cases it's more like the 95-5 rule or 99-1 rule, where you have an outsized portion of your revenue and success factors and outcomes associated with a smaller number of partners. How do you identify with who those next ones are? And how do you facilitate this entire partner journey, particularly on the terms of the partners and how they're actually doing business, right? So we really truly view that holistic partner journey wholeheartedly, and that really resonates with the way you've sort of defined the world there in your report. With PRM and TCMA kind of intermixing to understand that those aren't discrete steps along the way, right? A partner needs to be able to enroll and get onboarded successfully, do some things to help with demand gen, be enabled, maybe circle back to doing some things that help further generate demand and develop the relationship, plan and perform, and kind of have this constant upward cycle of success that crosses lines of all those systems involved. And really at the heart of that is the partner experience. If you'll go to the next slide. Where we bring all this together seamlessly in a single pane of glass. And this partner experience is, as you noted as well in your research, is essential, right? It's the bedrock, and it also is evolved quite a bit from maybe where it was in generations past within the PRM and channel technology space of being kind of designed for the partner. We also see the tail wagging the dog, proverbially speaking, right? With the partners being the ones who are coming in and a little bit more self-service and enrolling and being and kind of pulling business in rather than having business pushed to them. And they're viewing this as a real business enablement application rather than say maybe a more marketing content heavy sort of a website or portal, right? As in generations past. And so they've got a one-stop shop to come in and understand first and foremost where they stand in terms of the relationship with the manufacturer, supplier, vendor, and what they need to do to further that, making sure that they're getting credit and attribution for all those things. But then also have at their fingertips the combined weight and power of tools to do demand generation, as well as be enabled to service that demand, those kinds of things, and track their total book of business with the vendor. And then perhaps most importantly, also understand not only what they owe the vendor, but what does the vendor owe them, right? Those kinds of things. So that this is moving at the speed of their business, very consumerized UX that is data first, dashboard driven, doesn't take much learning curve or training because some of these partners are more casually getting involved, and they're coming involved and enrolling in the programs and things faster than we can sort of as a channel management teams, right? Take them by the hand and lead them individually. This thing has to be a sort of self-maintaining, self-running process, if you will. And so if you go to the next slide, this is sort of why PRM has evolved to be the center of this tech stack. And again, it's that combination of all the things. I think you alluded to the 11 different software packages and things that, upon reading some of these reports, feels a little bit daunting. How do I implement all these different technologies? Well, the PRM as it constituted today is going to solve for at face value, right out of the box, for a lot of those core functions and competencies that we just talked about along that the partner journey, a lot of those key amenities of the program. But there's always going to be incumbent things. What we're essentially doing in Channel is taking go-to-market motions, marketing capabilities, enablement functions that in a lot of ways pre-exist to a certain degree within the organization, and we're just now trying to extend them now to a more wider external audience of partners that the definition of which is expanding. And so in order to do that, integration has to be like job one. I mean, when we talk to customers, their first question really now is about integration and about extensibility. So these integration first sort of buyer mindsets. On an average, we observe about 5 to 7 integrated functions as part of the first phase or two of a maturing company or a mature company and mid-enterprise that is when they're implementing a solution like a PRM that they're having to plug into. There's an incumbent LMS, there's an incumbent CRM, there's some of these other oftentimes collateral enablement functions and even marketing tools and things that really have to plug into this that already exist. And really tether into the core capabilities and tools. So you're coming in and you're not having to reinvent the wheel on the core things that we need to be doing in terms of how do we actually manage relationship with partners, help identify partners that are strategically kind of rising up, managing the end-to-end funnel and pipeline flow and those kinds of things. And then how do we differentiate ourselves as manufacturers and suppliers in the programs that we're offering? And what are the unique needs of a given maybe subset or segment of partners within our ecosystem, or a program within our ecosystem, or maybe our industry? And that's where those extensibility tools are coming in are vital as well, to be able to add capabilities, whether that through some additional data that's unique to us, some additional partner experiences or capabilities or feature functions or amenities that need to be added or snapped in, if you will. So as a result, you have this central PRM front door, a nice clean experience that is we're able to orchestrate the entire kind of end-to-end life cycle through a unified, integrated way that ties all of our systems together. And to be able to do that across the ecosystem, we're having to operationalize different functions as our ecosystems grow. And that's why, at the risk of quoting another research group, I think we agree, however, is that Jay McBain has noted that PRM has become more foundational than ever, which I think parallels a lot of the research that you outlined here today. And I would be so presumptuous as taking that a little step further to adjust that to it's the partner relation management is really the ecosystem operating system, or right on theme with your terminology and research is the ecosystem automation platform, right? So that's really how, maybe a little bit different vernacular, but we see the world very similarly as you are defining with PMA. Is the and part of the big reason for that is the ecosystem is getting more complex and more targeted. A lot of the things that were very interesting in Peter's report was this proliferation of the types of programs and types of partners that are involved in the ecosystems, the nature in which they are. There's a gamut of how casual they are versus how, I think the era of a very straightforward kind of just reseller program who's just buying and selling, taking margin, and they're very brand loyal or mono-branded, or at least adhering to a smaller group of brands. That is rapidly winding down, and certain industries is already kind of on its deathbed, if you will. And so this idea of we're looking beyond just the sort of transaction margin taking partners, but looking at the overall buying process. Who are the other partners involved in our ecosystem? Previously, many of them, such as affiliates and those kinds of folks and influence partners, have really been the domain of marketing, and we haven't really in Channel formally cultivated those relationships and designed experiences for them and brought them into the overall data picture quite as well. We have to wait until the quarter closes and we can 2 months later digest all the back-end data that we can pull out manually from all the myriad systems that marketing's using and we're using and accounting is using to try to figure out the score, right? Rather than be able to actually operationalize those things and bring them into the fold from the get-go and manage the experience all the way through, right? So having the right mix of capabilities that are going to be able to align to the sort of carrot feeding and the operationalized processes that support this wider tent of partner definitions beyond just the transacting ones that we traditionally had focused on. If you'll go to the next slide, I think this maybe highlights it a little bit finer point is a lot of the transacting partners that we historically had seen, as you noted, Peter, earlier, those margin taking resellers and things, they're really focused on, you know, the decision stage. You look at the overall buyer's journey. There's a lot of research out there that suggests, depending on the nature of the product and the industry and those kinds of things, you may have as many as 20 plus to 30, at least a dozen points along the path where you're becoming aware of the products, where you're kind of considering. And by the time you get to anyone that's close to the transaction level, like a classic reseller, the decision is already largely made, if not fully made by that point, or at least there's a direction already leaned. And I think one of the things that the mature programs are becoming aware of is the awareness and consideration stages of that, and formalizing the relationship with the partners, or I guess making partners formally of people and voices in the industry who had influenced those things before it even got to, say, a reseller's deal registration that they might show as being singly attributed. But how do we attribute all of the partners involved throughout that chain earlier and earlier, and particularly as that gets into the domain of demand generation and marketing, which is where a lot of influence is. So you're starting to see, in order to really have a real view of the true channel pipeline, the things that are near-term deals and things and sales to be made within your ecosystem, you really have to have a funnel view of, of marketing level tracking and insight of your prospective buyers, how they're being influenced in the market, and then who is doing that influencing, identifying those folks, and then being able to either approach them about becoming partners, or really invest in the ones who are being effective influencers, and really adding to the strategic investment that goes into those partners to help increase their overall influence on the brand and on your business growth, top to bottom. So this sort of focus really aims at moving us away, what we jokingly refer to as the dandelion model of channel management investment, which is kind of what it's been up until this point, where you're just blowing this dandelion in the wind and sort of trusting that these seed pods are out adding more dandelions in the field and having a general uplift somewhere. And it's historically been very challenging to empiricize that, particularly when you look at how mature things like direct sales motions are, and their ability to take $1 of marketing investment and trace it all the way through to ultimate outcome, and put a value on. We put $1 in this machine, and $5 comes out. It's a very clear, definitive, straight line, investable way of managing and monitoring that, right? That in an era of more scrutiny on budgets, we have to be able to demonstrate that, and we have to be able to demonstrate that live as it happened, as opposed to 3 months after the fact, when we finally been able to kind of crunch the numbers and declare winners, so to speak, right? So and as the report notes as well, this idea of not just partner earned, but partner sourced and partner influenced revenue, and the importance of that. And so this is really about, I think, channel in a lot of ways catching up to the technological maturity and sort of empiricism that direct sales and direct go-to-market strategies have enjoyed and perfected over some years now. But it's with some added complexities because of the nature of channel programs, is that you're dealing with partners who may be somewhat opportunistic. They come in and out of your lives. They may not be something that you have their attention day in and day out. We're increasing greater scrutiny from a budget perspective from our C-suite, and we've got to be able to show our worth in a very empirical sense, and not just rely on what channel has historically been a strength, has been a relationship game, right? And so the relationships are great, but the sort of presumed general impact of his activities now has to be shown, and we have to doing so in trickier environments. And that's really where attribution comes in, which is an area we're focused on, and we were very happy to see as a chief insight, and understanding how do we have visibility across the entire not only pipeline, but funnel, right? And that's where the TCMA and PRM, you kind of marry together, and to say it's just trying to do partner marketing or just trying to do partner automation is of much lessened effect than the synergistic boost that you get from combining those two things or holistically together from day one, right? In a partner's experience. And so you're helping to generate funnel as well as service the resulting opportunities and sales and things that are managed within that, and with an eye towards attribution of how that occurred and how that was brought to bear in terms of value for the organization. So not just partner earned or partner directly sourced revenue, but partner influenced revenue. And so we're very much aligned in terms of that emerging trend and that focus area that we see in business, and how that's being focused upon by the more mature and aspirationally mature organizations out there. And so kind of a little bit of a recap of the trends as we sort of see them and how we're focused on them from just a product perspective within our own platform. If you'll go to the next slide, and which really mirror a lot of the trends that we hear from our customer base, that I think tells a lot of the same story that your research has really helped to refine and define and hone in on. Really kind of comes into two focus areas. One, there's the ecosystem, right? And what that means again is that broader identification and classification of what our partners and what sorts of capabilities and enablement do they need to be successful within their relative spheres, in particular as they cross spheres. And how do we operationalize that ecosystem, particularly in a way that is partner-centric and recognizes the fact that partners are the ones wielding a lot of the power in today's ecosystem spaces. They're the ones that are bringing business and kind of having that pull model, if you will. And how do we do that in a way that can be done at scale, whilst then leveraging the data in between that to help us understand who we should be focusing on, what are the trends, what is causing performance outcomes versus not, those kinds of things. So then we get into the ROI side, where we have to be data minded from day one in terms of how we design a program, how we implement to operationalize it in a way that we can then measure and monitor all the way through, which is an essential component of being able to have the constant improvement loop of to say, hey, we can now see how effective things are going, which partners, which programs, which processes, understand how to improve our overall output as a result of that, and then backfeed that into the total system of demand generation, go-to-market influence and attribution through revenue production, and re-operationalize the refined versions of that. So we're doing everything with that mind of how we enable an ecosystem with a measurable approach from day one that's designed to be ROI capturing and ROI communicating, and so that we are able to not only justify investment, but be in a optimized a place to invest further for our companies. And of course, none of that happens without being able to do so with data. And that's why being on a consolidated, integrated platform brings that data together, so that data picture can be used and visualized in real time as you're going through your quarters and your fiscal years and all those kinds of things, rather than kind of waiting for, again, the score tabulation with bated breath at the end of those things. And then that gives us, of course, the opportunity to do what everyone is hoping and has high expectations for as we go through this AI journey together as an industry, of being able to bring to bear AI and machine learning capabilities into that to help us understand at a level beyond what we might be able to just anecdotally put together as mere mortals and humans, right? What we should be doing next, identifying some of the trends, helping us to do things that generate content and outcomes and things within our ecosystem and optimization to give to many of these partners, but also be predictive and somewhat prescriptive to us in terms of how we administer our programs, identifying next best steps, areas to invest, areas to divest, all those kinds of things. And really, that's kind of the sum value, is to be able to operationalize a complex ecosystem with an eye towards ROI, leverage the combined data and add AI capability on top of that to really truly drive the success. And that really represents the combined partner management automation as you've described it and as we see it here today as well. So with that, I will I will stop my spiel and my pitch, if you will, my shameless plug but it really is not so much a plug as it is just shared excitement with the research that's been brought to bear and that Peter has done, and we thank you for that with research in action there, simply because we think it's spot on in terms of the trend that really identifies and puts to paper in terms of both the analytical proof of that, and as well as some vernacular to kind of define that as the next generation of channel-enabled technology. So please scan the QR code on your screen to download the total report and be able to digest all the insight and goodness that lies within there. And then I believe we have also a way to contact both myself, but most importantly, our man of the hour in Peter O'Neill. And you can reach out to him and or research in action to help get some more specific insight and guidance and some things to how that can apply and how some of those vendors will be able to help you in your particular business needs and use cases and industries be as successful as possible with partner management automation. So with that, if there's any other comments from you, Peter, love to hear them. Otherwise, we'll sign off with a thank you to everyone who's watched here today, and we hope you found some value and insights to glean to help you continue to grow your businesses and make channel your most valuable asset in businesses. Thanks.